Good morning and welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar. My name is Isabella Conroy and I'm a student intern at Global Community Resourcing. I'll be joined by Global Community Resourcing Project Assistant Georgie Gould to co-facilitate today's webinar. The topic of the webinar today is a relevant issue within Australia, which is the need for increased beach safety and awareness of dangerous conditions. This is the focus of Smart Beaches, which will be discussed in detail by our speaker. Today's webinar is facilitated by Global Community Resourcing for the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. Global Community Resourcing has extensive international linkages, and we've been fortunate enough to work on many international projects and research entities. Those who have attended previous sessions know that our webinars are designed from feedback received via our online platform, the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative. The aim of our webinars is to bring together local, national and international perspectives in research and development, as well as deployment of smart assistive technology in the community care sector. The collaborative site is accessible to all and free to register if you're interested in being involved with our online platform. Please note that Global Community Resourcing is not promoting or endorsing any particular product, research entity or organisation. The purpose of our webinars is to serve and to inform viewers of various smart assistive technologies and associated innovation currently in development and/or deployment. In today's webinar, we will be discussing cutting-edge technology and smart infrastructure to improve beach safety, provide real-time updates on conditions for lifeguards and beachgoers, and increase public amenity. Our speaker today is Tony Blunden, Special Project Officer for the Smart Beaches project. Tony is the Coordinator of Business Support for Leisure Services at Lake Macquarie City Council. He led the Smart Beaches project in 2019 to 2020 and is passionate about the use of technology in practical ways to support decision-making and situational awareness. So welcome to the Community Care Smart Assistive Technology Collaborative, Tony, and please take it away.
Excellent, thanks Isabella. Just share my screen. And thanks everyone for joining me today. And it's really exciting to be able to talk to you about the Smart Beaches project. I really enjoy these chats where it sort of goes across industries a little bit, and we can talk a bit more about what we did, but also how that might apply into your problems and the services that you're trying to offer. So yeah, I got to be the project manager for Smart Beaches project, which is pretty cool to be able to see a job advertised saying we want someone to manage a project on the beach. Like, that's perfect for me. So I dived into that one, and it's been a really good experience, and it's something that continues on. Let's go to the next slide. So the way the project came about, we were successful for a grant under the Federal Smart Cities and Suburbs project. We actually entered the grant at a collaboration of over 25 partners. So a really complex project from that point of view, from the stakeholder management and contractor management point of view. And the spider diagram down the bottom was some of our initial planning, trying to help define our problem statement or the areas that we wanted to work on. Basically, the brief was smart technology on the beach, and that's a really broad brief. There's a lot of options we could have taken, and looking around that list, there's things about signage, wayfinding at the beach, assisting people there, actual amenity at the beach, and all the way through to environmental issues like stormwater management, erosion and sea level rise, vegetation management, public events. So a little bit overwhelming for the project itself. And so we were able to use this planning to help really focus down on what we wanted to solve. And they were the bits that we highlighted in red on that slide. But really what we ended up focusing on was lifeguard risk assessment. We thought in a number of other areas there was already some really good work going on. Or there was already avenues for that work to be taking place. But really where we were struggling was in having good quality data for our lifeguards to help inform their decision making. So where should we be having lifeguards? What time should they be patrolling? Which beaches should they be patrolling at? And a lot of this stuff, the lifeguards had really good intuitive ideas of what should happen, but there wasn't really good data to back that up. And that means when you're trying to put a business case together to make a change or make an improvement, it's really difficult to put that together based on intuition and gut feeling. So we spend a lot of time in this area, and it's something that I would really advocate for in these sorts of projects, is to really be clear about the problem that you're trying to solve. Technology can lead you down a whole bunch of rabbit holes on opportunities and the latest shiny thing that's coming up. If you don't have a clear light on the hill, that clear vision of what you're actually trying to solve, you can end up being a person with a hammer looking for a nail. And this, while it was a little bit frustrating actually for some of the project team early on, it really paid off later on in the project when opportunities came up or ideas came up, or we had left field kind of ideas coming in at us from interested parties. We could always refer back to this and know exactly, well, what is it that we're trying to solve and how does that fit into what we're doing right now? It's not saying it's not necessarily a good idea. It just might not fit in with what we're trying to do, and it helped us really stay on track. Another thing that we did was we realised that sometimes these technology projects can be a little bit dry, and while we weren't focusing on providing services directly to the public, obviously the lifeguards provide services to the public, but we weren't looking to provide free Wi-Fi and different information directly to the public. We were really looking to inform the lifeguards. It was important to be able to communicate, what are we doing on the beach here? You're putting up some cameras and you're doing a bit of work. What exactly is going on? And we know that sometimes the technology projects can be a bit dry for the public. So we engaged a local artist to put this together, and it ended up being a really good resource for us when we were at the beach speaking with the public, to help them understand that we're not trying to turn the beach into the Matrix. We're not trying to track them everywhere they go on the beach and make them book into things and totally changing their experience. The idea here is to show that it's going to be a normal day at the beach. It's still going to be the beach. So we have all the things that you love, and the technology's hidden in the background. It also gave us an interesting way to go down the list of technology and that we were attempting to implement. We show that on the right-hand side and talk to each of those different pieces and say that this is is there anything here that sort of piques your interest that you'd like to talk more about? And the kids really enjoyed it, doing a bit of a Where's Wally, trying to find all of those items. And we actually produced a black and white version of this image. The artist that drew it actually did it on the computer, so he could quickly just remove all the color layers and just give us a black and white image of it. So we handed that out with pencils and things for kids to color in, and they could engage in the discussion while they were doing that, and parents could talk to us while the kids were coloring in. So there's a list of things down the right-hand side that we tried. I won't go through each of those in detail. There's a couple of key pieces of technology that I'll talk about in a moment. But what I wanted to show here is we tried a whole bunch of different things. Now, some of those were mandated in the grant. So we'd said that we would do it in the grant, and so we had to go ahead and do it. There is a little bit there of chicken before the egg. We talked before about making sure you define your problem statement. Well, we sort of, by having the solution already there, or a solution, we had to kind of work around that a little bit. But one thing we did learn as a city was how difficult it can be to implement some of these things, and we've now, some of the bits that we aren't necessarily using at the beach are getting used elsewhere in the city. Things like the smart water fountains that we put in with water flow counting in them. We don't really use that for the lifeguard management anymore, but it's still there on the beach, and it's part of a broader network within Lake Macquarie. So we kind of leveraged off of that. So one of the key pieces of technology that we did install and we continue to use is this automated crowd counting. So with the lifeguards, one of the key pieces of information for their risk assessment is how many people are actually at the beach, particularly how many are in the water, but how many are at the beach. Because if we've got a really dangerous beach but nobody's there, well, then nobody's going to be drowning if nobody's there. Conversely, if we've got a fairly benign beach but it's absolutely packed full of people, someone's going to get themselves into trouble somewhere. And so that really increases the risk that the lifeguards have to manage. And the way this data has been collected in the past is it's really just an estimate from the lifeguards on duty, and they're not, people aren't great at doing that. Certainly when it's not your primary duty, they're there to watch people in the water and to help people that are in trouble, not to count crowds. And computers are very, very good at counting, doing those laborious sorts of tasks and counting numbers. And so we've looked into using AI to look at these camera images and count how many people are there. It's something that's done quite frequently in a number of areas, but all of the algorithms have been optimized for sort of short range and indoor environments. And once you put it out to sort of 300 meters across a wide area of beach with people not just walking down a pathway, but standing, sitting and running and lying down and also carrying all sorts of equipment, it really makes it challenging for the algorithm. We worked through a number of different approaches to that, and we've settled on two at the moment that we're continuing to use. One's through a company called Unleashed Live, which is an Australian company, and the other's through the Water Research Lab at University of New South Wales. But we're having to continue to develop that. But you can see from the image below, it's getting some pretty good results. There's a few people that have been missed, but not many, and importantly, there's no false positives there. So when it picks up people, it picks them up. The green squares are indicating a person, and the red squares is actually an additional piece of AI that they have, which can measure the distance between people. So that's any two people closer than 1.5 meters for the social distancing. So we've really found some additional uses for this beyond just a lifeguard risk assessment now in helping inform the local area police on how crowded our beaches are when they're getting crowded and if we're seeing high densities. And that's certainly an advantage with image analytics is there's a whole bunch of additional uses you can have. So we've got these cameras here now. We can also start using them for vegetation management, dune erosion, water conditions, and there's a whole bunch of other uses for that sort of data. And that's really when you're going to get your best bang for your buck out of cameras. Cameras do bring with them a bunch of, not problems, but concerns as well around privacy and personal information. So it's really important that you understand where your images are going to, who's got access to them. There's actually an anonymization program that runs on this. If we do get somebody close to the camera where you can see a face, it'll blur that face out so that you can't do any individual detection. And we certainly haven't applied any AI here that can track an individual. So we don't do any analytics on the individual at all. So if in the next hour when we do our next count, one of these people is still there, we'll have no idea that it's the same person. It's just another person in that image. So from a lifeguard risk point of view, that doesn't matter to us because it's just all about how many people is the lifeguard having to manage at any given time. It could be 8 different people each hour over the day or the same person for 8 hours. It's still a person that the lifeguards need to manage. This is the way that we push that data out though. We do allow the lifeguards to see the images, but again, because of that security, it's one of those things that's quite a novelty to start with and then wears thin pretty quickly. And this is really what they want to see. So this gives them, the graph at the top is the count per hour. The graph down the bottom is the total for the day. That's normally how they report. And then on the top left here, we've got the last count. So that lets you know if the AI is up to date, and also the peak attendance for the day. So that'll be the highest number that was recorded for that day. It gives them the number and the time. And so that matches their current reporting. The other piece of technology that we used in the project and it's proven really useful and we're continuing to use it is GPS tracking of our equipment. So what that's let us do, we actually did GPS tracking of flags and signs as well, but we found that the rescue equipment is the most useful. So that's what we've progressed with. So this allows us to see where the paddle boards and jet skis are located on the beaches. And we're able to draw these geofences on the map there. And so we can get automatic alerts and reports whenever an asset breaches that geofence. So if one of the paddle boards goes into the water at Southstein, we'll get an email saying paddleboard 1's in the water at Southstein. And then at the end of the week, we can also get a report that says this is how many times the assets went into the water. This is what time they went in. This is the time they came out. This is the distance they paddled. We're really looking forward to doing some analytics on that to see average times in the water, average distances traveled that might inform fitness tests, etc. It's also something we're hoping to integrate in with the lifeguard reporting, because at the moment, at the end of the long day at the beach, they have to think back on, what did I do that day? Did I did a rescue earlier? That would have been before lunch, and they just got to remember back on all of that. If we can give them a list saying, well, the rescue board went in the water at this time, the jet ski went in at this time, they can look back on that and go, oh yeah, that was that rescue. Oh, that was just, I went for a paddle at lunchtime, so that was that one there. That was just the warm up for the jet ski. We had to take it out each week. So they can annotate then against that list, but we pre-provide them with that list to say, this is what happened. You sort of explain what each of those activities was. So what we're really trying to do there is just take that mental load off the lifeguards, get them focused on the beach as much as possible and focus on engaging with people, and pre-populate any of this information for them as much as possible. So those GPS trackers have been really good. They've actually been used on turtles up at the Great Barrier Reef. So they're really robust in the marine environment and have lasted really well. And the data we're getting from them is quite reliable. The batteries as well, they're all low power devices. So we're hoping we get a couple of years out of the batteries. But even if we had to replace them each year, that's still pretty good. It's certainly not something you have to pull down and charge every day. They just stick them up and they work. I talked a bit earlier about communication, and we have, whilst we weren't focused on the public specifically, we were focused on helping the lifeguards communicate what they know to the public. So we tried a couple of different ideas. One of them is this electronic chalkboard. I've got one behind me here. They're based on an e-paper display, so exactly the same as what you see in a Kindle e-reader. So then that way they don't need constant power to work. The one behind me is backlit at the moment, but you can turn the backlight off and the image will stay on the screen. That way you can use a small amount of power to make the update to the data, and then it will sit there on. They're actually designed for bus stops and those sorts of applications. And we've now got it reporting some live beach data. As we get more of the environmental data organised in the background, we're hoping to provide more information here, perhaps a feed from the water quality data feed, and also a local beach swell detection feed that we're going to get. So if we can replicate that data online as well, this might help the lifeguards not having to put out their chalkboard every day and give some live information to people at the beach. The other signage that we tried is the flashing light dangerous current sign. Something we heard from the lifeguards is that they get really frustrated. They put out their dangerous current signs and people walk straight past them and jump in the water. And then they're having to pull them out with the rescue board. And so what we thought as well, there's possibly a little bit of overkill there with the number of signs that go out. And so instead of putting out a bunch of individual signs, we had this sign developed alongside a group called Ocean Live, and basically the same sign but with flashing lights on it, so that we could turn it on and off or put it at the most dangerous location. So we've got information around the whole beach. We've got the flags saying please swim over here. We've got the flashing light sign saying look, just wherever you're swimming, don't swim right here, that's where the rip is. That really helped the lifeguards. The sign was a little bit larger, so it's easier to see from a distance, so people didn't sort of walk close to it and then realise what it was, but they were already committed. I could see it. And also with the flashing lights, it just helps the lifeguards be able to say to people, hey, could you please move up the beach? Big sign with flashing lights right here. Perhaps not the best place to swim. So it helped, people sort of, oh yeah, fair enough, moved up the beach instead of saying, oh, I didn't see the sign. So that's been an interesting one. The other thing we did alongside that brochure that we developed early on is we took that and actually made some murals at Redhead Beach as well. We've got one beautiful big mural, which is basically just a big advertisement for the beach. It's beautiful sunrise down at Redhead. But this one here is placed by the lifeguard station, and it will help the lifeguards speak to the public about what they do and what all the signs mean and how things work. It's got the exaggerated channel there showing the waves come onto the sandbank where people are, roll off the sandbank into the channel, and all of the water rushes out through that channel. So that's where you're going to get in trouble if you're swimming. I've seen some pictures like this in various different designs, and normally there's somebody drowning and waving their hand out the back, and we took that person out. We thought we wanted to keep the positive message, so we've got the person swimming across there out of the rip. We've got the surfers on the bank out there away from the swimmers. We've got the family there on the sandbank and the waves coming in. And we also included some of the lifeguard resources. So you've got the jet ski, the first aid kit, the rescue board, and you can see some of the flashes there on the watch and the board showing the GPS tracking of those devices. And we also put one of the buoys out the back, just showing we're taking that information from the Manly Hydraulics boys and Bureau Meteorology to integrate all of that data as well. So some of the lessons we learned, as I talked earlier, is about keeping the problem front of mind. So making sure that you actually understand the problem that you're trying to solve and you keep that front of mind. So we would put that up in various documents and talk about it in the meetings to make sure that we actually weren't drifting off on something shiny and exciting that wasn't going to necessarily solve the problem. It also helped us keep a clear message when people were saying, have you tried smart sun cream dispensers, or have you tried smart lockers? They sound like a really cool idea. We're focusing on lifeguard management and the lifeguard risk decision making. So perhaps we could talk to somebody else about how those might apply at the beaches, but for this project it's kind of out of scope. So it really helped with those discussions. The next thing is to take small tangible steps. So we really found through the project that these can be a bit of an elephant, especially when you've got such a broad scope, and it's difficult to tackle the whole thing at once. And just looking for some early quick wins or some early things that you can implement and you can learn from was really useful for us. It sort of, sometimes we wanted to make sure we take the steps to design and develop and implement and get everything done at once. But it was really beneficial when, for example, the GPS trackers, some work we had to do with our LoRaWAN network to get them up and running and get all that data flowing correctly. But the manufacturer also had an option for 4G devices that basically just put the SIM card in and they'll work straight away off the Telstra network. So we did that. We were able to then get those devices up and running, see how they were working on the boards, see what sort of data we could get from those devices and how that would actually show up on our dashboard while the other work was going on to get the sort of detailed solution that we wanted long-term happening. Allowed us a quick win and allowed us to actually see some of that data flowing. We did some similar things with cameras, putting up some smaller cameras just to get data flowing and get things happening while we got sort of the better solution in place. So taking small tangible steps. I think as well with this, it's also can be a little bit daunting with smart cities projects. There's so much really good technology out there and really good ideas. You see Elon Musk on YouTube clips talking about all sorts of ideas that he's got, and you see these computers that can win at chess and do all sorts of crazy things, and it makes you sort of feel like, well, unless we're doing something like that, there's no point, and we're sort of falling behind. We could do this, but it's kind of been done a million times before. I'd like to sort of make the point that I don't think it has been done a million times before. I think those real cutting edge projects are super exciting and super interesting. But as a city, like as a government organisation, part of a city, just doing what you can to move things forward and improve the lives of the lifeguards. So right now they're doing manual reporting of crowd counts. Now we're hoping to get them some really good information through the cameras. But one thing we've done is just improved the way they can record that information on their using an online system rather than having to write everything down and then transcribe it into the system later. So we did a few little things like that just to improve their lives. We've now provided the GPS feeds to the manager so he knows when things are happening at the beaches. He doesn't have to do anything about it at the time. He can just pay a bit more attention and know that, okay, the guys at Redhead have been in and out of the water a few times today. Let's check up later to make sure that they're all doing okay. So you don't have to solve the whole world. You don't have to move the entire industry forward. If there's small things that you think will benefit your business and help solve your problem, then I'd recommend diving into it. And I think you'll find that it perhaps hasn't been done as much as it's been advertised. We're seeing that with these signs here. I was sort of under the impression that getting things up onto a digital sign would be pretty much off the shelf and done before. And in a lot of cases, it hasn't. So particularly using these signs, not as bus stop signs, but as beach signs. I haven't seen that being done before. And so there's been a bit of work to do with the contractor on developing their back end to make that information more available to the sign and able for us to jump in and make changes as we go. That's why it's sitting in my front room instead of at the beach at the moment, because we're still working on getting that all up and running. So take small tangible steps, take small steps so that you can sort of learn as you go, but also don't feel like you have to change the world with whatever project you're doing. I think you'll quite often find that whatever you can do to use technology to improve your problem will be well received and probably hasn't been done as much as perhaps people like to make you think. The last lesson we learned is that data integration is key. There's a lot of different data sources out there and a lot of different data platforms, and that's sort of, you take small steps, you use the bits that are available and you can use, but ultimately you're going to want to bring that data together in some way so that you can compare the people count to the water temperature and the rescue numbers to the wind that day, and the GPS tracks to the number of people that are on the beach. And you want to be able to compare all of that data and have it work together. You need to be able to bring that together. It also helps with things like the signage. If you've got it in one place, then you can push it all out. So the sign doesn't have to take multiple feeds, it can just take the one feed. So data integration, and that's can be a really complicated thing. We took a couple of different approaches to this, and there's a lot of software out there that theoretically can be used to do this sort of work. But we really made some big steps when we engaged a company that specialized in doing this. It's one of those things that theoretically sounds quite simple. It's like, yeah, we'll bring in multiple feeds. You've got this software, it can take feed from anywhere and it can show you all your data, but it was really quite a complicated piece of work. Once we got onto this group, Three Crowns Technology, who have done a bunch of work with Coastal Watch and had experience in the coastal environment as well, we really started taking leaps and bounds forward on this. So data integration's kind of the opposite to that. Take small tangible steps is we need to be thinking about how we're going to bring this all together, and that's when you can really start to get some value multipliers out of the data that you've got. So where to from here? So I was reading on your site about your community of practice to share knowledge, and we're really working along similar lines there for the beaches. So we set ourselves a vision statement to create safer, smarter, better beaches through the application of research and well-integrated technology. So what we wanted there is to actually, a big part of what this data can do is it can feed researchers to get new insights from that data. We're not necessarily going to get all the insights from the data as a council. There's a whole bunch of work to actually, once you collected the data, to do something with it. And that's what researchers love. So if we can get them some consistent data, some high quality data across a number of different beaches, we can work with them to give us insights from that. Sorry about the dog in the background. And the last thing about well-integrated technology is particularly relevant for the lifeguard community and probably for your communities as well, I would think, is that they're not going to want to fiddle with technology and sort of tinker with stuff and make it work and see how it could be applied. And they need things to work so they can get on with their job of rescuing people. And but it's not well integrated and doesn't work to support them in their role and make their life easier, it'll be quickly just moved aside, not out of sort of spite for the technology, but just so they can get on with their job, even if that might be counterproductive in the medium to long term. That's how they're going to work. So it really needs to be well integrated technology that we're going to use, not highly speculative, highly developmental stuff. So we want to be looking at that. We've got 4 goals for the smart beaches, is to get those reliable, scalable systems for the collection of data. So we want things that are reliable and can be pushed out across a number of different beaches so we can collect this data as easily as possible. And then we need to turn that data into accurate and informative outputs for the lifeguards. So this is, okay, we can collect the data in the background and then we can actually make it useful for them and hopefully continue to make it more and more useful into the future. The 2 down the bottom is we're trying to gain partnerships with other like-minded land managers. So that's really the community of practice. It surprised me when I first came into local government how many different councils are all working on exactly the same problem. We focus a lot on how our beach is different to your beach, but my view is that there's probably more in common than there is different. And so if we focus on what's in common and we can partner up, we can get much better economy of scale with these sorts of solutions. And we've had quite a lot of success recently with our community practice, getting people together and just talking about what they're doing and how they're approaching different problems and the experiences that they've had. So I've got a lot of hope for that. And then the last one, collaborating with leading research and industry stakeholders. So we're not definitely not trying to do this all alone. Like I said before, we've had a lot of value when we've worked with people that have experience in this field. And as a council, we don't necessarily want to own all the technology or be the founders of everything. We just need to have stuff that works for us so we can do our job. So we want to be collaborating with as many of those research and industry stakeholders as possible to keep things moving forward. So that's the Smart Beaches project. It's been a really great project. I'd love to hear any questions you have and answer them.
Thank you so much, Tony, for your presentation. We do have a range of questions that have been sent through the collaborative and we have enough time to get through them. So I will start with an important question that's come through today online and the joys of working from home. What's your dog's name?
That's Hugo.
Very good.
Yeah, we gave him the toughest name possible because he's a cavoodle.
That's great. Glenda has sent through a great presentation. Thank you for your time. You mentioned earlier in your presentation that you have been working with a range of stakeholders and partners. Have there been any lessons learned about good engagement and managing expectations?
Yeah, I think some of the partners, we did do some work early on to try to understand what each partner was trying to gain from the project. And I think some of them just needed or wanted to be in the project to get some exposure to this sort of area and were willing to bring a lot to the project. But one of the big challenges with these sorts of grants is a lot of it's being done kind of out of their development budget or out of their marketing budget. And then when it comes to the crunch of actually having to deliver, it's competing with real operational priorities for that company. And so, we definitely felt that squeeze. We did a lot of work to manage early on and we still ran into those problems where actually getting delivery out of the project, out of some of the partners was quite challenging. All came in with the best intentions, but we all know how busy we get. And if you've got a paying job, and then your sort of volunteer job that you've offered as part of a grant, I mean, I know which one I'd probably prioritise if I was the CEO of that company. So that was really challenging, and it was really the way that we had the most success with that was just to keep up communication, keep working forward on, the things that we are both working together to achieve and to succeed, and to really focus on those common opportunities. So they, the reason they got into the project in the first place, and what we're trying to deliver, and how that's going to actually benefit both of us, but to try and maintain some flexibility with their reality. If they are not going to be able to deliver at the end of the month, then they're doing this work kind of gratis. There's no good jumping up and down and, demanding that we're the council and we're the lead organisation and you must deliver. It's really developing that relationship and communicating that there's no better way to manage such a large group of stakeholders. And we also found, some of them it wasn't going to deliver what we perhaps hoped for or wanted. And in some of those cases, we just had to focus where we were getting the most value from our partners. So a couple of the partners, we got the minimum out of, and worked with them to sort of find that part, and that's totally fine. And others really went above and beyond and became really embedded with the project and driven to help make it succeed. So I think communication and flexibility with that large group.
And there are important lessons learned from any project. Following on from that, Tyler has asked, you discussed the lessons learned from the project, but what have been the biggest hurdles implementing the technology?
One of them is, I guess, expectations. That there's a lot of glossy brochures out there about what this technology can do, what any piece of technology can do. And they're quite often a fair way off the reality. It's sort of theoretically what it could do, but practically hasn't been done before, or it doesn't quite work that easily. So that's probably one of the biggest hurdles, is really getting through the marketing and through the glossy brochure and down to what can we really expect from this technology, and how well is it going to work. The next biggest hurdle was integration. Talked a bit about that, how important it is. It was also one of our biggest challenges. So, and that's integration of different technologies, but also within the stack for that one technology. So making sure that the camera can actually be mounted where it needs to be mounted, and then it's got access to a network. And then that network has got access to it hasn't got firewall provisions in place, so it can't speak with the next one. And then the camera can actually speak with the host service that it's using, and then the host service can speak with the AI platform, and all the way up. And one of those bits breaks, and everybody's pointing at each other as to where the problem sits, and working through those issues of where exactly does the problem sit. And are we trying to go for a gold-plated solution here, whereas there is a workaround that would make it start working right now? And just continuing to have those conversations and try to just keep that communication again as open as possible. I quite often would not play dumb, but would try to just ask the questions that maybe people were afraid to ask because they didn't want to look like they didn't know what they were talking about, or that they were naive about how technology was working. I'd just say, look, I'm a project manager. I'm not I don't program. So how's this work? How does this work for you? That was a big hurdle, getting all the technology to work.
Jordan mentioned that you briefly spoke at the beginning of your presentation about the communication with the public, in particular using the Where's the Wally map. What's been the reaction of the public?
It's been really good. We had quite a lot of engagement with the legal team early on, just to work out exactly what could we do on beaches with cameras, and what do we need to be aware of, and how do we need to control it, and are we within our rights as a council to be able to do this. And then from a PR point of view on how can we explain that without saying we have the right to do this, you can't stop us. But we need to make sure we actually did have that right. But then, okay, but even with that right, why are we doing this? How does this actually going to help the public? And why do we think that that benefit outweighs any potential privacy implication that may present itself on the beaches? And so we've really worked up that argument and that discussion point to be able to talk about the benefits of getting clear data collection for lifeguards and helping make sure we got lifeguards at the right place for people, and all of the protections we had in place to make sure it wasn't going to be accessible to other people, and we weren't going to do any of the facial recognition tracking, and we weren't all of that stuff. And then we're almost disappointed that no one really asked us those questions. People were really accepting of the use of technology in this way, and the use of technology in this environment. We even had sub-comments like, oh, I assume there was already cameras all over the beaches watching us. So we actually found some really good responses in that regard. And then as far as using the technology to help the lifeguards, I've been so impressed working with the lifeguards the last couple of years now on just how motivated they are to really help the public, and they spend a lot of time trying to engage with the public. I know our lifeguards here, they know all of the local surfers and all of the local groms, and then there's a band of sort of the old guard of the previous lifeguards. They know all of them, and they spend a lot of time investing in those relationships at the beach, so that when they ask people to move or something to happen, they've kind of got the support of some of those key people. And then they they try to be as approachable and as possible to the locals. And so they spend a lot of time building those relationships. And so we were focusing on helping them and enabling them and getting them to really do their job better. I think people were pretty appreciative that, they wanted lifeguards at the beaches, and they want them to be at the right place at the right time. So they could kind of see that task. And we did spend a fair bit of time with the lifeguards early on to make sure that they were on board. We really saw them as key advocates for the project. If the lifeguards were there saying, I don't like that camera, I don't really want it there, that message would quickly flow out to the public as well. So we had to make sure that we were actually helping them, and it wasn't just marketing spin. But yeah, the reaction from the public's been really good, and those sorts of artifacts helped us engage in that discussion in a positive way.
Thanks, Tony. We have time for one or two more questions. You mentioned then the lifeguards, and that your project has been focused on keeping the problem front of mind, which has been the user. What has been the lifeguards' reaction, and are there any training considerations, and have they been part of the co-design process? Has there been changes to what you guys are doing because of what the lifeguards need?
Yeah, definitely. So we got the lifeguards on board early on to discuss the problems. Something we found is that the operators aren't necessarily, like the lifeguards themselves, aren't necessarily the best design engineers, and the best design engineers aren't the best lifeguards. And so there's a big role for myself, and we picked a couple of the lifeguards that were sort of had this bent in communicating between those two groups, and making sure that if you just give the lifeguards a blank sheet of paper to say, let's design a system that's going to help you with this, they're like, don't even know where to start. Whereas if you give the whole problem to the design engineers, they'll come up with something that's practically useless. So there's a real back and forth between those groups to continue iterating. Part of where we've ended up with the cameras and the GPS trackers is because that stuff was giving information that the lifeguards found useful and was really in the background for them. Another piece of technology that we tried in the project was smartwatches. So we had the lifeguards wearing Garmin watches, and we didn't have the battery life to track their movements for the whole day, but we were tracking their steps and their heart rates, and we're hoping to find some correlations between rescues and heart rate and things like that. What we actually found there is that the lifeguards have to remember to wear it each day. They have to remember to charge it each night. They have to remember to hook it up to the phone at the end of each day and check that it's actually connected. Anyone with a smartwatch knows that sometimes it doesn't sync and you've got to restart the watch or restart your phone or get that connection working, and you know, it's a bit of a pain, and lifeguards just aren't interested in that stuff, and so it became too much effort for the return we were getting from that technology. It's something that is a potential for the future, but for right now we've dropped that one. It's just too much hassle, and that's really just from the feedback from the lifeguards, and not necessarily verbal feedback, just watching their behaviour with that technology. It's too much hassle, so we moved back from that one.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you for your presentation today and for those questions. If you haven't already done so already, please visit the collaborative site and register online. You'll be able to access today's presentation and have the opportunity to ask further questions. Please also check the collaborative for more information on future events. If you have any further questions or inquiries, please email us at sat@communityresourcing.com.au. I would like to thank again the members of the collaborative research team, in particular Bella Conroy, today's co-moderator, and today's guest speaker, Tony. Thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.